Have you ever felt the crushing weight of an invisible script? One that whispers day after day that your worth is measured in productivity, in smiles handed out like loose change, in the quiet suffocation of your own needs so others might breathe easier. You were taught to fold yourself into smaller, palatable shapes, to mistake exhaustion for virtue, to wear goodness like a leaden crown that bows your head lower with each passing year. But here's the truth they never told you. A life spent pleasing, performing, or numbing yourself into compliance is not a life at all. It's a slow surrender to the void, a rehearsal for a death that begins long before the body fails. And now, here you are, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., or scrolling mindlessly through another cascade of empty pixels, or sitting in your car outside a job that drains your soul like a tapped vein, wondering, is this all there is? The world feels like a broken machine, humming with meaningless motion, and you're just another cog grinding down to dust. The existential ache is relentless. It's not just sadness. It's the eerie silence of a universe that doesn't answer when you scream into it. But what if that very silence is the invitation? What if the emptiness isn't a void to fear, but a canvas? One you've been too afraid to touch because they told you only saints and madmen dare paint their own colors onto existence. This is the paradox of meaning. It cannot be found where you've been taught to look. Not in the applause of strangers, not in the relentless chase of more, not in the fragile idols of success or love or piety that crumble at the slightest touch. Meaning is not something you stumble upon. It's something you choose. Like a rebel planting a flag in barren soil and declaring, "Here, I will build." This is not about cheap optimism. This is about the raw, unflinching act of confronting the abyss and realizing, with terrifying clarity, that the abyss has been confronting you all along. It asks, what will you do with your one wild, fleeting, inexplicable chance to exist? The answer doesn't lie in the stars or in some preordained destiny. It's buried in the quiet rebellion of waking up each day and deciding, against all odds, to matter to yourself. The search for meaning in a world that feels hollow is not a problem to be solved but a threshold to be crossed. An initiation into a deeper way of seeing. The first truth you must face is that meaning is not handed to you. It is not a prize hidden in the machinery of the universe, waiting to be uncovered like some cosmic Easter egg. Meaning is a language you learn by living, a dialect of defiance spoken only by those willing to stare into the dark and whisper back. There are 3 silent currents that shape this journey, none of them easy, all of them essential. The death of borrowed dreams, the alchemy of suffering, and the rebellion of presence. The death of borrowed dreams is the first reckoning. You were handed a script before you could even read, told what success looks like, what love should feel like, what a good life entails. But these were never your dreams. They were someone else's heirlooms, passed down like fragile china you were too afraid to break. And now, here you are, holding the pieces, wondering why their definition of happiness feels like a suit that never quite fit. Letting go is not despair. It is the necessary shedding of a skin that was never yours. This is the first act of meaning. To stop living by proxy, to stop mistaking the map for the territory. Then comes the alchemy of suffering, not the glamorous, cinematic kind, but the slow, grinding weight of existence that makes you question whether any of it matters. Suffering, when faced head-on, becomes the forge. It burns away the trivial, strips you bare, and leaves you with the only question worth answering. What will I do with this ache? The choice is stark. You can let it hollow you out, or you can let it hollow you open. The difference is everything. One path leads to numbness, the other to a deeper kind of sight. The ability to find beauty in the cracks, to recognize that even futility can be a kind of freedom when you stop demanding guarantees. Finally, there is the rebellion of presence. Meaning does not live in the past, nor is it waiting for you in some imagined future. It is here, now, in the unglamorous act of showing up, not as who you think you should be, but as who you are. This is the hardest work, because it asks you to stop fleeing, to sit in the silence, to taste your coffee like it's the first and last cup you'll ever drink, to look into the eyes of another person and really see them, without the filter of your own agenda. Presence is the quietest revolution, the one that happens beneath the noise, in the spaces where no one is applauding. These themes are not steps, they are layers, each one revealing a deeper truth, that meaning is not found, but forged. It is not a destination, but a way of moving through the world. And the only thing required of you is the courage to stop looking for answers outside yourself, and to start living the questions. There is an ancient story about a man who spends his life climbing a mountain, only to find nothing at the summit but empty sky. He sits there for days, waiting for revelation, until finally he begins his descent. And it is only then, as he walks back down the path, that he notices the wildflowers growing between the rocks, the way the light dances on leaves after rain, the quiet camaraderie of other travelers he had ignored in his single-minded ascent. This is the paradox the universe keeps trying to teach us. We climb searching for epiphany, when meaning was always in the walking itself, in the ordinary moments we thought were merely the spaces between the important ones. Consider the myth of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down each time. On the surface, it is the ultimate parable of futility. But Camus insisted we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because the moment he recognizes the absurdity of his task and embraces it anyway, he becomes greater than his punishment. The rock is no longer his torment. It is his domain. In that shift of perspective lies a secret. Meaning is not about the weight you carry, but how you choose to stand beneath it. Your rebellion is not in escaping the boulder, but in deciding the role itself can be sacred. Then there is the Eastern tale of the fisherman and the businessman. The businessman, watching the fisherman nap in his boat after a morning's work, lectures him on ambition. If he worked harder, he could buy more boats, build an empire, retire wealthy. And then what? Asks the fisherman. Then you could rest, says the businessman. The fisherman smiles and closes his eyes again. The story cuts to the bone of our modern sickness. We chase futures that are just delayed versions of the present we already have, mistaking motion for purpose. The fisherman's wisdom is not laziness. It is the realization that meaning cannot be stockpiled like grain for winter. It must be gathered fresh each day, or it rots in your hands. These stories are not answers but mirrors. They reflect back the truth we already know but have been trained to ignore. That meaning is not some distant peak, but the ground beneath your feet. Not the grand finale, but the notes that make the music. The universe has been whispering it all along in the language of myths and symbols. You are not here to solve the mystery, but to live it. The realization that meaning is not found but forged must inevitably collide with the reality of your daily life. The alarm clocks, the inbox full of demands, the relentless drumbeat of a world that still measures worth in outputs and outcomes. This is where philosophy either becomes marrow in your bones or evaporates into just another pretty thought. The first practical rebellion is to reclaim your attention, that fragmented currency we've all but surrendered to the highest bidder. Start small but radical. 10 minutes where you do nothing but watch steam curl from your tea, or really listen to the cadence of a loved one's voice without mentally drafting your response. These are not exercises in mindfulness but acts of quiet defiance. Proof that you can still claim sovereignty over your own experience in a world built to distract you from it. Then there is the matter of suffering. When the void whispers that nothing matters, meet it with the most subversive question of all. What if that's the point? The very absence of predetermined meaning is what makes your choices sacred. That tedious project, that strained relationship, that hobby you're almost embarrassed to love. They matter precisely because you decide they do, not because some cosmic ledger declares them important. This is the secret pragmatism of existentialism. Your life becomes weighty not when you find purpose, but when you stop asking permission to assign it. Try this tonight. Write down 3 things that made time feel different today, no matter how small. The way your cat's fur caught the afternoon light. The stranger who held the door just a second longer than necessary. The song that made your heart stutter. These are not just moments. They are the bricks with which you build your own cathedral. And what of the grand systems that make it all feel futile? The grind of capitalism, the dizzying pace of modern life. The answer is not to reject them entirely, but to refuse their dominion over your inner world. Clock in at your job, but don't let it clock into you. Pay your bills, but don't pay with your soul. This is the tightrope walk of being human in an inhuman system. You participate, but on your own terms. Notice when you're trading hours for dollars and nothing more. Then carve out slivers of time where you work for no currency but joy or curiosity. A banker who paints watercolors at midnight is not indulging a hobby. She is maintaining a beachhead against the tide of meaninglessness. Now the final and most terrifying invitation. To act as if your existence is already justified. Not when you lose 10 pounds, not when you get the promotion, not when someone finally loves you enough, but now, as you are. This is the transformational core. Every spiritual tradition whispers some version of this truth. Enlightenment isn't earned, it's remembered. So tonight, stand in front of your bathroom mirror and meet your own gaze without flinching. Not to critique, not to rehearse tomorrow's performance, but to acknowledge the sheer improbability of you. Against cosmic odds, here you are, a collection of stardust that can ponder its own existence. The universe didn't make you by accident. It made you by process, and that makes you no less miraculous. The call is not to find meaning, but to embody it. To stop waiting for a sign and become one. When you walk out your door tomorrow, do so as if the mere fact of your breathing is a kind of prayer. Not because you're certain it matters, but because you've decided to act as though it does. That's all courage ever is. A choice to proceed as if your steps make ripples in the fabric of everything. They do. They have. They will.